Director Alejandro Algray brings us I Heart Willie, or I Heart Emoji Willie, or I Love Willie, however you say it. But I will say, if you kind of say something like that in the UK, it kind of means something different to what it might mean in other places. Anyway, I Heart Willie. This is the latest Steamboat Willie Mickey Mouse public domain horror movie. We have actually reviewed a couple here before, and I suspect there'll be more to come after this. So I Heart Willie focuses on 4 YouTuber friends as they go around to investigate various claims of paranormal activity, spooky sites and things like this. And they end up in this kind of abandoned house which has apparently got this urban legend about the ghost of this mouse boy. And he was in the story, at least, this story, he was the inspiration for Walt Disney's Steamboat Willie, or Mickey Mouse. He was apparently born genetically mutated and was severely burnt after that, and his ghosts apparently is kind of like still haunting this area, and there's been various kind of disappearances and things like this up until this point, and this all inspired Walt Disney to create Mickey Mouse, you see, at least according to this story. And now we have these 4 YouTuber friends investigating these claims, and of course there may be truth to these claims as this Mickey Mouse themed killer is out for blood, or skin more appropriately. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss what works with I Heart Willie. Right, so this, out the 3 that I have seen so far that are these kind of Mickey Mouse slasher films, this is definitely the most straight horror. The other 2 are a little more campy, a little more schlocky. This one is playing it dead straight and is by far and away the kind of the hardest in regards to its horror element. So if you like a bit more of a visceral horror experience and you want a kind of a Mickey Mouse themed killer, then this so far I think is the one that is top of out of the 3 that we've had so far. In actual fact, I would say this movie, certainly the second half of it, plays more like a torture porn style film, the likes of Saw or Hostel and things like this. Our Mickey Mouse or Steamboat Willie killer likes to chop body parts off, he likes to skin people alive, and there are extended sequences, although not especially explicit on screen. There are extended sequences of people kind of getting tortured and mutilated and things like that. And as such, it has this definite harder edge to it than a lot of these kind of like public domain sort of style slasher films that we've had over the last few years. Certainly, as I say, more of a visceral, more of a straight kind of horror experience. To add into that, I think the character, the Mickey Mouse killer, so to speak, looks the most threatening out of the ones that we've seen so far. You know, he's got this kind of burnt bit sort of body, these kind of whited out eyes. The mask looks kind of like a bit more sort of, you know, horrific and things like that. And we've got an interesting kind of backstory where it's suggested that there's kind of some type of paranormal thing going on with him, but it's not specific about what it is. It's suggested that he may be kind of immortal rather than kind of like undead as such. But it doesn't really kind of give you all the answers, which I think adds to a little bit of mystery to the large degree. The other thing with this film is it has a kinkier edge than you might expect. I won't go into details why, but there is definitely a kinkier element to this movie, which I wasn't kind of expecting. Some might even say a dark romantic edge to this movie, but certainly a kinkier edge that I think was, even though this story, and we'll come on to the negatives, is very slight, this was something I wasn't necessarily expecting out of this movie. So yeah, there is a definite kink to the movie, and as I say, the movie is a little bit more harder than other ones. So it's, even though sometimes the movie will cut away, or you'll see things kind of like more reaction shots to kind of like the mutilations and stuff, it's still probably a little more gory than a lot of these kind of lower budget public domain slasher films. So there it is. And we don't have like loads of characters. It is kind of quite focused on our 4 individual YouTubers. So, you know, you could have spent a lot of time with these sort of characters and things. Okay, so, you know, if you want more of a visceral experience, then check this one out. What doesn't work, as I've kind of alluded to, the story is very slight here. This movie is more concerned about having a horrific atmosphere, torturous kind of scenes in the literal sense, and having this kind of more a horror experience rather than telling a strong narrative, because ultimately it's people going to this house and then getting picked upon by a killer. That's the broad story. As I said, there's a kinkier element to it which I won't go into, but the long and short of it is there's not a huge amount of actual narrative in this one. So if you're wanting more of a complex story, then this definitely isn't the movie. So there's that. I have to say the biggest issue I had with this movie is the depictions of our protagonists here. They're meant to be YouTubers, but we never really see them do anything with that, never really film anything. There's one point where someone's holding a camera, but that's about it. They seem completely idiotic. In actual fact, they make some of the most, you know, unrealistic decisions you've probably seen in a movie. Let me just give you one. So when they are investigating this area, they come across a seemingly abandoned van, and it is covered in blood, inside and out. What do? A couple decide to have sex in this van. So, you know, like you do. They don't call the police, they don't get out of there. They decide to have sex in this van, which is covered in blood. Yeah. So that's just to give you an example of some of the kind of the sillier elements in this film. The acting, now I suspect this was filmed in Mexico, and some of the actors don't appear to be English as their first language, so the acting is on the kind of the variable side, shall we say. The variable side. And, you know, as such, where you have characters doing these really idiotic decisions, and then kind of like not brilliant acting, it's hard to kind of root for them, to be honest. So then the kind of the horror itself. Now, as I say, out of these, and I would even go as far as to spread this over the sort of the, you know, the Jack and Jills, the Humpty Dumpty kind of like low budget slasher type movies that we've had. This is probably the most hardcore out of those. But I think if the movie wanted to go that way, it should have maybe even lent even further into it and had made a real name for itself as to go more like Terrifier levels of kind of gore and sadisticness, because it doesn't go there. It's not as kind of like as gory or as violent as like the Terrifier films, but it's. So why didn't it? Why if you're going to go so far, why not take it to its conclusion and have like, you know, a really sort of extreme movie that I think would sort of maybe gain notoriety. Yes, it's harder than say, you know, a lot of these other kind of like public domain sort of horror films, but not as much as I think it would. It's no more gory than that Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, if that makes sense. And potentially it was like a budgetary issue where they don't have the kind of the budget to show you kind of soaring through prosthetic legs and things, but whatever the reason, it is kind of mean-spirited and violent, but not to the degree that I think makes it sort of stand out, if that makes sense. So overall, it's certainly a more hardcore horror film with an interesting killer and an interesting kind of like fetish kind of vibe that kind of goes with it. But the story and the characters kind of let it down sort of to make it ultimately somewhat of a kind of unmemorable film in that degree. So as such, I'll give it a 5 out of 10. If you just want a visceral horror experience, then as I say, this one for a lower budget movie might kind of like appeal to that. But outside of that, I don't think the story really does much. So it's a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time.